Simon & Schuster Audio presents Nothing Like the Movies. Written by Lynn Painter. Read by Charlie Bushnell and Jesse Walensky.
New Year's Eve. If my 15-year-old self could see me now, he would punch me in the dick. Set it up. Wes. This place is packed. Dude, I told you, Adam said, loading a piece of gum into his mouth and smirking as we walked into the party. Loud music was booming from a speaker somewhere, and everyone appeared to be talking over the sound. I followed him and Noah up the stairs and into the living room, where it looked like everyone I knew from high school was in attendance. Shit. People were everywhere, sitting on couches and standing around, and I instantly regretted my decision to go out. Bennett! Alex ran over from the other side of the room and wrapped her arms around me, pulling me down into a hug. Happy New Year, Benedetti, I said, swallowing hard as I hugged her back. How are you? She asked, and I hated the way she smiled when she pulled away. It was one of those pitying smiles, like she was asking how I was handling the fact that my life had turned to shit. Good, I said, torn between being happy that my friends were back from college, holy balls, I have a social life again, and kind of hating being social. Because as nice as everyone was, I could tell they all felt sorry for me. Sorry about my dad, sorry about the fact I dropped out of college, sorry about the fact I was no longer playing baseball. I was one hell of a sorry guy. Since Noah and Adam got back, I'd said absolutely not every time they invited me out. But for some reason, New Year's Eve made me cave. The fact that it was a holiday had softened me, apparently, which I was now regretting, because nothing felt the same. The last time I was with these people, we all had big plans for our futures. And, well, they still did. I, on the other hand, had pivoted. When my dad died, 2 weeks after I moved in at UCLA, I came home for the funeral and never left, deciding to bail on school and everything that the future held for me, as if I had a choice. Now that it had been a few months since his heart attack, I was firmly settled into full-time employment at the grocery store with a side hustle as an Uber driver. Life was fucking great. Come on! Michael's playing Money Bet in the kitchen, Noah said, pointing. It's too loud over here. Money Bet, the new favorite party game, was basically just dares with money attached. Some guys I worked with at the store made it up, and when I mentioned it to Adam and Noah, they went nuts with it. I followed them into the kitchen, stopping to grab a drink before sitting down at the table. It's about time, Bennett, Michael said from his spot at the other end of the table, drawling just enough to let me know he was already buzzed. You've been a hermit all break. I gritted my teeth when I heard the first few notes of that old song from Fearless playing in the other room. It just figured that the party would have that song playing in the background. It was 100% on brand for my life lately. I've been busy, I said, picking up my cup and downing the entire thing. I wasn't trying to get drunk, but I wasn't trying not to either. We'd pre-gamed a little at Noah's with his brother, so I had a nice start. Money Bet 5 says Bennett can't make it from here, Noah said, pushing an empty can in front of me and gesturing toward the kitchen sink. Except, I said, then hurled the can in the direction of the sink, watching it bounce off the counter and clatter to the ground. You suck, he replied, and I pulled a $5 bill out of my pocket and set it in front of him. Still better than you. Josh just got here, Noah said, looking down at a text. With my chicken sandwich, hell yes. I said, Money Bet chicken sandwich says you... I trailed off when I saw her. She was there. Holy shit. Libby was standing in the living room. I'd managed to avoid her for the entire 2 weeks she'd been home on break, but now we were at the same party. On New Year's Eve. Are you kidding me, universe? I'd vetoed 3 different parties that night, parties where I thought she might show up, but I assumed this one would be safe. I'm not sure if things got quiet or loud, blurry or hyper-focus, but I know the universe changed as I looked at Liz. Everything melting into impressionistic streaks of fuzzy background colors. She was talking to Joss, smiling, and the emptiness I felt at the sight of her, a gnawing ache, made it hard for me to breathe. I hadn't seen her in person since the day of my dad's funeral. We'd done the long-distance thing for a few weeks after that, but then I ended it. I had no choice. I can't breathe without you, but I have to. My fingers itched to touch her, to go to her, to grab her hand and pull her into the kitchen with me, so we could laugh about Money Bet and convince someone to do something ridiculous. But she wasn't mine to touch anymore. It felt like 1,000 memories of her, smiling at me, laughing with me, tangled up in my arms in my dorm room, swirled together and crashed into my lungs like a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. She was wearing a slouchy sweater, black and soft and oversized, with the front tucked into her plaid skirt. She looked nice, all dark tights and cute boots, but my eyes focused like lasers on the sun-kissed shoulder the sweater had exposed, and the inky edge of her tattoo that was peeking out from underneath, calling to me. Because I knew that tattoo better than I knew my own. Probably because I'd never simply looked at hers. No, I'd explored hers, traced hers, kissed hers, studied that inked-on latitude like her body was my map, and those coordinates were my true north. You're the only thing I know like the back of my hand. God damn it. Money Bet 3 says you can't guess the card, I said to Adam, grabbing the deck from the middle of the kitchen table and trying to distract myself. I was pretty sure I couldn't handle the memories that were sure to kick my ass if I continued looking at Liz. And almost worse than the memories were the questions that never seemed to go away when I thought about her. Does she still go to the beach to read? Has she been to Aura In and Out since I left? What songs has she added to her freshman year playlist? And I didn't even let myself consider whether or not she was seeing someone. I was better off not knowing. I deleted my social media accounts after deciding not to go back to school. Partially because I knew I'd spend the rest of my life creeping on her, and partially because what the hell would I post that mattered? While my friends were sharing pics from frat parties and studying for finals, it'd be wicked cool for me to post a slice of my life as well, right? Worked a double shift at the grocery store today and taught myself how to fix the blower motor on the furnace. Runs like a dream now. #blessed. Except, and it's a queen, he said, smiling like an ass. I turned over the jack. So wrong, son. We want to play. Joss walked into the kitchen and sat in the empty chair between Adam and Noah, dropping a fast food bag onto the table as Adam tossed $3 at me. I love you and this sandwich, Noah said, tearing into the bag. So much. I felt like my entire body was on alert, buzzing, knowing Liz wouldn't be far behind Joss. I kept my eyes on the cards as Adam said, All right, Joe. Money Bet 5 says you can't say the Pledge of Allegiance backward. There was laughter and heckling when she started, but I couldn't hear over the roaring in my ears as I felt Liz take the empty seat on the other side of Adam. Red hair and Chanel No. 5 became my atmosphere, the mix that I breathed into my lungs and that seeped in through my pores. I refused to look at her. I can't fucking do it. But my face burned as I felt her eyes on me. Shit. I started shuffling the cards as Joss kept going. Nice beard, Bennett, she said quietly, her voice diving into my bloodstream and pumping to every part of my body. I inhaled through my nose and had to look. I couldn't ignore her. I raised my eyes from the cards, and then everything inside me stilled as she smiled at me. Because it was the same. Her smile was the same knee-weakening smile that she'd given me the first time she said she loved me, in the parking lot of the animal shelter in Ogallala, Nebraska. Red lips, twinkling green eyes, pink cheeks. Holy shit, she doesn't hate me. I swallowed and didn't know what to do as a million questions ran through my head. Why didn't she hate me? She was crying the last time we spoke, for the love of God. She was supposed to hate me. What the hell am I supposed to do now? I didn't realize we were just staring at each other until Noah said, For Christ's sakes, kids, get a room. Money Bet 20 says Liz and Wes won't kiss. Silence hit the kitchen with an open hand, the awkward slap echoing as no one quite knew how to react. Before I could process that and find a way to make his words disappear, Liz raised her chin and said, Accept. If I were standing, I'm pretty sure I would have stumbled backward from the force of that tiny little 6-letter word, crashing into my chest like an uppercut. I heard nothing but my own heartbeat, pounding like a bass drum in my skull, as I looked at her retrograde red mouth, smiling and daring me to kiss her. I clenched my teeth as my mind ran wild, because I never wanted anything more than I wanted to kiss her at that moment. I wanted to pull her onto my lap and lose myself in her kiss, in the warmth I hadn't felt since the day she waved to me from the security line before flying back to LA. But if I did, I knew we'd get back together. No way was I strong enough to let her go again, even when it was the best thing for her. And it was the best thing. So I swallowed, pushed back my chair, and stood as I looked down into her emerald gaze. "That's a hard pass for me," I said, a little shocked by how unfeeling my voice sounded when every cell in my body was drowning in feelings. I left the kitchen, not interested in the bullshit that Noah yelled as I walked away. "Why are you such a dick?" Or the verbal takedown Joss was sure to deliver the next time she saw me. Fuck them all, I thought, as I headed out the back door, needing to get the hell away from there. But I knew, as I sat alone on the deck at midnight, staring at the orange tip of a swisher while everyone inside the house yelled, "Happy New Year," that I never forgive myself for what my words had done to her face. Chapter 1. A year and a half later. I hate you so much that it makes me sick. 10 things I hate about you. Wes. I shut off my alarm, 6 a.m., and sat up in the dark. AJ, my roommate, muttered, "A sadistic ass bag," and rolled over in his bed while I climbed out of mine and got dressed. We'd been sent to the same Canadian summer baseball league and stayed with the same host family, so even though it was only the first day of fall classes, it felt like we'd lived together for years. I knew he'd sleep in until 5 minutes before we had to leave for lifting, but I wanted to be wide awake and ready to go hard when we hit Acosta in a couple of hours. I put in my AirPods and cranked "Trouble's Coming" as I took off down the hill, making my way past dorms whose names I'd yet to learn. I'd run every morning since moving, and there was just something about campus in the early hours, before it came alive, that I loved. Seeing the sunrise, listening to the birds, between songs, running past the green trees on the hill that somehow felt different from the green trees back home. I was smitten with California. I was smitten with UCLA, to be precise. And honestly, my smittenhood probably had more to do with the fact that it was where my second chance was happening than the location itself. Yes, it was a gorgeous setting, but it was the setting where my dreams were taking place. That was the sappy shit that I felt in my bones as I slowed to let a scooter zip past me, because I was obsessed with the possibilities of this place. The baseball potential, both college and, fingers crossed, MLB. The educational potential, the other potential. This spot on the map, Westwood, was like the starting point of my everything. I kind of wanted to break into song as I jogged around a dude with a hose who was washing out a trash can. I was that big of a sap. Instead, I gave him a chin nod and kept running. "Good morning, my dude." AJ might have thought I was out of my mind for running so early every day, but he was just a baby. An 18-year-old who'd barely had time to shed the title of prom king before reporting to school. I, on the other hand, was a 20-year-old freshman with a lot to prove. Because 2 years ago, I'd had everything. Then I lost it all. So now that I had a second chance to grab onto that everything, you could bet your ass I wasn't casually reaching. No, sir. I was greedily grabbing with both hands and never letting go. I was carpe dieming the crap out of my life, throwing myself into every single moment because I knew firsthand how fleeting those moments could be. I mean, if I was being honest, I was absurdly giddy about my first day of school. Like, I didn't want to spew bullshit like, "Today's the first day of the rest of my life." That was tragically close to live, laugh, love, right? But it kind of felt like it was, and I was so ready. I ran my 3-mile loop, showered, then grabbed a breakfast burrito with AJ at Ackerman before we took scooters over to Acosta. I fucking loved the scooters. Since I hadn't brought a car to college and didn't own a bike, the bird scooters that could be found all over campus were the stuff of my dreams. West plus scooters equals HEA. God, I really am an overexcited kindergartner on my first day of school, aren't I? I was still nerding out when I got to my first class. Lifting had done nothing to hack my buzz. "Welcome to Civil Engineering and Infrastructure." I entered the lecture hall the second the professor started speaking. which meant that all 100-ish students in the enormous classroom turned their eyes away from him to witness my entrance. Way to go, dipshit. I'd completely underestimated the amount of time it took to get from Acosta to Bolter Hall, so my decision to grab a protein smoothie with AJ after lifting had been a total mistake. But I'd been so stoked after being the top baseball lifter of the day, hell yes, that it seemed like a brilliant idea at the time. Why not hang out for a few extra minutes doing nothing but reveling in the fact that so far, on day one, I'd yet to screw up? I quickly took an empty seat in the front, unzipping my backpack and pulling out a notebook. I was not a laptop guy when it came to note-taking. It was an intro course, the introductory course for civil and environmental engineering majors, so the last thing I needed was to miss any important information. Instead of going over the syllabus with you, such a cliche thing to do on the first day, I'm going to trust that you are capable of reading it. You look like a smart bunch. Professor Chaudhry, a tall man with a serious mustache, stood at the table in front of the hall and said, "So let's get started, shall we?" I pressed on the eraser of my mechanical pencil, opened the notebook, and got ready to take notes. In this class, we will be looking at the role of civil engineers in infrastructure development and preservation. I started writing as he launched into the material, still blown away by the fact that I was taking an engineering course on the first day of my first quarter. I'd assumed Gen Eds would fill my freshman year, bogging me down with pointless classes like world music and anthropology, so it felt amazing that I was enrolled in this, as well as chem and calc. I'd missed math and science in the 2 years I'd been out of school, as crazy as it sounded. I blame Mrs. Okun, my 10th grade physics teacher. She talked me into attending an engineering camp in Missouri the summer after my sophomore year, during the 2 weeks between summer and fall ball. And I really hadn't known what to expect. I'd really only gone because it was a 2-week getaway from boring Nebraska, right? I never would have imagined how much I'd love being around other people who liked math and science in the same way that I did. Before camp, I'd been a good student with no clue what I wanted to do with my life, aside from being a major league pitcher, of course. But the minute I had arrived, it felt like I'd found my spot. I understood the way everything worked in that place, with those people. It all made sense. That camp lit something inside me and made me feel like I was meant to follow the engineering path, even though baseball was my higher priority. So the fact that I was finally here in a lecture hall, on my way to making it happen, it felt huge. I basically wrote down Chaudhry's every word until class ended, knowing I wouldn't need the majority of the info, but not really caring. I took college for granted the first time. The idea that, of course, I could go if I wanted to, but after seeing those options disappear, I had an entirely different outlook now. I was cherishing every fucking piece of it. Bring on the notes, the study sessions, and the term papers. I wanted it all. After that, I went to chem, followed by lunch and a quick nap. I needed rest before practice, a little quiet time to get my head right. Because as great as it was that I killed it at lifting, that didn't mean dick if I couldn't throw. "You sure you don't want to hoop?" AJ yelled from the living room as he and some of the guys got ready to go shoot for an hour at the hitch courts. I loved pickup games, but I needed to save every bit of my energy for the first practice of my collegiate career. "Nah, I'm good," I yelled back, setting a timer on my phone and closing my eyes. But sleep was elusive. Because now that I'd made it here and had officially begun my educational and athletic career at UCLA, the time had finally come. It was time to get Liz Bucksbaum back.
Chapter 2. Before you came into my life, I was capable of making all kinds of decisions. Now I can't. I'm addicted. I have to know what you think. What do you think? 2 weeks' notice. Liz. Oh my God, is that? It was 7 o'clock, and the sun was barely up, so most of Westwood was still asleep. But not me. I was out for a run. And so was that guy, Mr. I'm trying to break a land speed record with the long legs. He was way in front of me, an extraordinarily tall dude who was probably a freshman basketball player, and I narrowed my eyes. No, I definitely do not know that giant. Ever since New York played in my AirPods, an underrated Harry song, and also, in my opinion, a total slice of autumn. Even though it was warm in LA, my head was already Stars Hollow vibing because the fall quarter had officially arrived, which meant my playlists were buried in musical piles of freshly raked leaves. Yes, it's a little too early for a PSL playlist, but I don't care. Because the first day of classes felt magical. It was almost like you could smell the crisp, unmarred freshness of a new term. It seemed like anything in the world was possible. Especially this year. After 2 years of applying for meaningless industry jobs that did nothing to further my future career, except teach me the easiest way to transport coffee from store to office, I had an internship. And not just any internship. It was with Lilith Grossman. I realized, when I waved to the groundskeeper who was hosing down the sidewalk, that I was smiling like a weirdo, but I couldn't help it. Because I actually landed a gig for my junior year that had the potential to pay huge dividends in my career. And it started today. Last year, one of my roommates, Clark, worked for the athletic department's video production team. I didn't know anything about most sports, but he told me they had a part-time paid opening, so I thought, what the hell? I applied because I needed money. It wasn't an internship, it was just a part-time student job. A job that I fell in love with. I was just a grunt who took photos and videos of athletes, at practice, during games, during lifting. That was my job. I basically just did whatever they needed me to do, hauling equipment to all varieties of athletic events. At first, I sucked at all of it. And then I sucked less. Because it scratched my creative itch. Just like music had the power to transform a moment in film, I realized that the way I captured an athlete with my camera had the power to create a story. Even though I was just a lackey in the department, I personally got a lot out of it. So when the announcement came that Lilith Grossman, award-winning documentary producer, was going to be making a sports documentary at UCLA and needed an intern, I applied in a heartbeat. Mostly because she worked for Heft Entertainment. Not only was she an accomplished video producer in the sports world, but she was a producer who had countless projects with my dream company. Heft Entertainment consisted of Heft Motion Pictures and Heft Television, as well as Heft Music. Both sides of the company were huge and worked with the biggest names in music and film. If they were winning an Oscar or a Grammy, they were probably with Heft. So, obviously, as someone who wanted to be a music supervisor for film and television, getting an internship there was huge. A lot of my heroes had gotten their starts there. And now, I was going to be one of them. I still couldn't believe it. Technically, the internship started today, but Lilith and I had been working together for a few weeks now. She'd reached out to see if I'd be interested in helping her get things set up on campus. She'd have an office at Morgan. The J.D. Morgan Center was where the staff and admin for all athletic teams had their offices, for the duration of the project. And since I had stayed in LA over the summer when most of my friends had not, I jumped at the chance. And it had been the best decision. I hadn't known what to expect from a successful producer. I'd kind of assumed she'd be an asshole, to be honest. But she was the opposite. She was this incredibly successful woman who seemed to want to share, with me, everything that she knew. She took me to lunch at a sushi place at the Grove, and she asked me about my goals. And when I told her, she pulled a pen out of her handbag and started mapping, on a napkin, how best she thought I could achieve them. And her insight was everything. Because my plan had been to get my BA in music industry with a music supervision concentration and then pray for a job somewhere in music supervision. But Lilith turned me on to the idea of getting a job in music licensing as a first step. In licensing, you'll work with music, but you'll also work with film and TV. You'll be earning a salary, very important, that whole money thing, while creating those valuable relationships that will ultimately be the key to getting the job you really want. Then she went on to list a handful of my idols who'd apparently gotten their starts in licensing. And it made so much sense. Music supervisors worked with licensing on a daily basis, so how better to get my foot in the door? Now, in addition to the courses required for my degree, I was loading up on everything licensing related and tacking on a licensing certification. It truly felt like a roadmap to my dreams. I'm smiling again, I realized as I stopped at the corner to wait on the light. I was smiling like a damn fool, jogging in place, but it was impossible not to, because this year was about to be everything. Honestly, I was still beaming like a middle schooler in love when I walked into my first class. Are you kidding me right now, Bucksbaum? I grinned even bigger as I headed for the front of Horace's classroom. What? What? Horace Hanks, music professor and my all-time favorite teacher, gestured in my direction. It's the first day of class and you don't even bring a notebook, a backpack, a pencil. I'm insulted by your lack of school supplies. Come on, Hor, I said, sitting down at the same desk I'd frequented for all 4 of his classes I'd previously taken. You and I both know that you don't just teach. You perform. I've learned that the best way to capture your, brilliance is to record your class and just rewatch before exams. I don't hate the sound of that, he said, scratching his bald head. But my feelings are still bruised by the disrespect. My apologies, I said, pulling out my phone to make sure it was silenced. Horace lost his mind when a phone went off. I hit record when class, psychology and music management, began, and the man did not disappoint. He'd always reminded me of that drama teacher on Victorious, which was probably why I liked him so much, teaching in a wildly unorthodox manner that was equal parts hilarious and embarrassing. One time, he'd sung an entire lecture, in falsetto. His methods were bonkers, but somehow they worked. I always learned so much from him. My next class was in the same building, though less entertaining and more boring. And after that, I headed to Morgan for my first official internship meeting. I was nervous, even though Lilith had been super nice the times we'd met, because she was so amazing that I didn't want her to see how amazing I wasn't. I approached her office, where I could see her working at her computer, and I knocked on the open door. Knock, knock. She looked up and smiled. Come in and sit, Liz. God, the woman was cool. She had a blonde bob with razor-sharp ends, so crisp it looked like she'd just left the salon. She was wearing a navy blazer over a white button-down shirt with the collar flipped up, ripped jeans, and a pair of tall red pumps. She had that pulled-together LA look about her, like she was ready to do a photo shoot for Vogue called Business Casual Chic. I took a seat in one of her guest chairs and said, So, how's it going? It was impossible for me not to small talk when I was nervous. Great, actually, she said, giving me a warm smile. I had a meeting this morning with the AD, and we have a lot of exciting ideas for this project. That's fantastic, I said, so excited to be part of this. Any you can share? Well, I'll share everything with you because we're a team. But I want to wait until they give me the stamp of approval. I don't want to get your hopes up for what I think is a brilliant plan if it doesn't happen. That's fair. So, here's your first internship assignment, she said, crossing her arms and leaning back in her chair. First of all, email me your class schedule and your work schedule, so I know when you're available for networking, but include which courses you're taking and who your instructors are. Okay, I said, coolly, like I wasn't freaking out that she was talking about networking. Your coursework is priority because you need that degree. but I really think we need to make the most out of this internship from a career standpoint, don't you? I couldn't be cool when she said things like that. I mean, Lilith Grossman, saying that to me? Yeah, I couldn't hold back the 1,000-watt nerd grin as I nodded. Because Lilith had all the connections I could ever dream about. My voice was a little too excited when I nodded and agreed. Absolutely, I do. If you're willing to devote the time, I say we lean hard into creating some foundational business relationships. I'm definitely willing, I said, regretting the tiny squeal in my voice. Perfect. And the second part of your assignment, she said, glancing at her watch before abruptly standing and pushing her chair behind her with the backs of her knees, is to watch a season of HBO Hard Knocks. Any season, really. I nodded. Okay. She grabbed a set of keys from the corner of the desk and put her phone in her jacket pocket. I have to head out, but send me the info and watch a season of the show. I'll be in touch in the next couple days, hopefully with all the initial project information. Sounds great. I very nearly skipped to Epicuria at Ackerman for food after that, buzzing in anticipation of everything that was about to happen in my life. It felt like the sun was shining brighter that day. The birds were chirping louder, and I wanted to do cartwheels across campus after I ordered food and took it back to the production office. I felt like I was on the precipice of everything finally happening, and it was impossible not to hum along to the "You Could Start a Cult," my favorite song at the moment, that was playing in my headphones. When I got to my cubicle, upstairs and on the other side of the building from Lilith's office, I wolfed down a salad at my desk and edited some of the footage I'd taken of the football players on move-in day for a reel I was making. I was still doing the grunt work job for the athletic department, so that tiny cube kind of felt like home.
Hey,
Clark said, dropping his stuff onto his desk.
I thought you were going to do the baseball team lift this morning.
I traded with Cody because I had an early class, I said, not looking up from my computer. So now I'm doing their practice this afternoon.
A lot of new freshmen,
he said, and I heard the tone of his laptop turning on.
Am I old if I say they all look like little babies?
They do, though, I agreed, thinking back to my freshman year. It was all a blur now, thank God. A fuzzy haze of stress and sad songs on repeat. It's bizarre that we were that wide-eyed and adorable just 2 short years ago.
You can spot them a mile away, too.
He agreed, his keyboard clicking.
It's even in the way they walk to class. Something about their steps screams, "This is my first time." It's like they clench their nervous asses and it gives them a weird gait.
Do you know if there's any more ranch in the fridge? I asked, taking a drink of water to wash down my very dry lettuce.
It's all expired.
Damn it.
We need to go grocery shopping for the work fridge, because I also noticed there's no ketchup or horseradish.
I minimized my file to find another image. Who needs horseradish at work?
Who doesn't?
Clark sounded dead serious.
Horseradish is good on everything.
Says you. We worked like that, side by side for a couple of hours, barely speaking. It was always that way with us. Clark was like my platonic soulmate. I was as comfortable with him as I was with myself. And sometimes it felt like we were just extensions of each other. Well, except for the horseradish adoration, that was all him. Finally, at 3 o'clock, he towered over my cube and said,
"Should we head over to Jackie?"
Jackie Robinson Stadium was where the baseball team did their thing. I nodded and saved my work. So what do they want exactly?
Just some general baseball preseason content,
he said, shrugging before raising his hands to adjust his hair.
Lifting, practicing. A couple reels showing this year's team.
Cool, I said, closing my laptop and sliding it into its bag. That should be easy.
Yep, no big deal at all.
We headed toward his truck, nearly getting mowed down by a couple of bros on scooters while we walked toward the parking lot. I smiled in spite of the near miss, though, because nothing said school was back in session like nearly getting run over by an e-scooter.
Chapter 3. The moment I saw you downstairs, I knew. My favorite wife. Wes. You think you can get tickets? AJ murmured, stretching his elbow over his head. He was wearing those stupid sunglasses that he bought for $5 in Canada, but I wasn't judging because the sun was shining directly into my shadeless eyes. For once I was jealous of his god-awful style. Probably, Mick answered, leaning into a hip stretch. But I need to know how many to ask for. You're in, right, Bennett? The team was warming up, running through stretches, but AJ was doing double duty, trying to get us tickets to an epic party that was happening Friday night. Since I didn't know anyone at UCLA yet, aside from the guys on the field beside me, I figured I'd just follow along and see what transpired. Sure, I replied as I stretched my hamstring. Partying wasn't a priority for me, but I wasn't opposed to being social either. After the hitters split off for base running and we, the pitchers, started working the bands, I heard my name. Bennett, you're up. I glanced toward the bullpen, and Ross was looking over at me. He was the pitching coach, but none of us actually called him coach. He was just Ross. I jogged over, ready to throw, even as my stomach had reservations. Fucking breathe and calm down, I told myself. I'd played baseball for basically my entire life, so I needed to chill with the nervous butterflies. It was only practice. Right. To me, it felt like a hell of a lot more than that. After not being able to practice for 2 entire seasons, it felt huge that I was there, that these opportunities suddenly existed for me again, after they'd all disappeared. I saw Woody, bullpen catcher, getting ready, but when I reached Ross, he leaned his back against the fence and casually said, "So tell me about your first day." I wasn't sure what he was looking for when he said it like we were just 2 random dudes chatting. I glanced toward Woody before replying, well, come on, Ross said, shaking his head with a half-smile on his face. The guy had always reminded me of a young Kevin Costner, circa Bull Durham, because he was not your typical coach. He never yelled and he wasn't intense. He didn't even seem like an athlete, to be honest. He was just cool, like he was simply a decent human who knew a lot about baseball. He said, "Don't come up with a bullshit answer for the coach. You and I both know this first day of school is more than that to you. And I'm curious how it's gone so far. What do you think of your classes?" Ross was the one I called when I quit the team 2 years ago, and he was the one I called when I wanted to come back. He was also the one who said thanks, but no thanks the first 10 times I begged. 2 seasons off is just too much, kid. They're great, I said, meaning it. I mean, definitely not easy, but at least they seem interesting. Good, he said, turning his head to spit. Everything else going okay for you? I'm sure it's a little weird after everything. Talk about understatements. Yeah, it's very weird, but in a good way. Had fat cells yet? Not yet. Well, don't, he replied, giving me a smirk. That stuff will clog your arteries and give you a jiggly ass. Stick to brewing meal plan shit. I am. I'd heard a lot about fat cells, but I was too hyper-focused on performance right now to put a lot of garbage in my body. I said, everything here is too expensive anyway. Right? Fucking LA, man. He gave his head a shake, straightened, and said, You ready to throw a few? I followed him and threw bullpens, which felt amazing. There was nothing in the world like throwing a fastball, when it hit exactly where it was supposed to. And all those ridiculous butterflies disappeared the second my first pitch smacked into Woody's glove. I was on a roll, hell yes. Until I noticed there was a giant blonde dude filming me. What the hell? Ignore him, Ross said, apparently reading my face. They've got crews filming all the time for social media. You'll get used to it. Ah, I said, feeling a twinge of apprehension in my gut. I was working my ass off to be chill and not focus on the fact that how well I performed in preseason could basically determine my entire baseball future. So the last thing I needed was to have strangers with cameras adding pressure. It's just Clark, Woody yelled, grinning in the direction of the giant. Nobody cares what that asshole thinks. Oh, your mom cares, the guy, Clark, apparently, replied with a laugh, though he didn't lower the camera to stop filming me. And she told me to tell you hi. Tell her hi back, Woody said, pulling his face mask back down. And ask her if she can get me tickets to your party. She's pretty exhausted, but I will, Clark said, which even made me laugh. Now shut the hell up so this guy can throw. Thanks, I said, taking a deep breath. No problem. Clark moved over and lowered himself to his knees. Trust me, it takes a village to shut down a Woody.
Chapter 4. Never let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game. A Cinderella story. Liz. Bugsy! I turned, and Jimmy Rockford was waving me over to the dugout with his enormous arms. He was a senior catcher coming off of a torn ACL, and the guy was built like a gorilla. A ginger gorilla with a braided beard. He was a lot to look at, but that was part of his charm. Yeah? I asked, pausing my playlist as I pointed toward the field where it looked like the outfielders were getting in their fly ball reps. I need to get shots, so I can't chat right now. Any extra tickets for Friday? My brother wants to come. As if. His twin brother Johnny played rugby with Clark and was a walking stereotype. He was huge and rough and wild, and when he drank, he was prone to fighting and general destruction. I liked Johnny, but I wasn't about to invite him to a party at our adorable new off-campus apartment. Sorry, I said as I walked in the other direction, grateful my roommates and I had all agreed upon a strict adherence to the party rule. The three of them were wildly social. I was less so, and it just made sense to use tickets to ensure our parties didn't get too big. I'm all out. Check with Clark, though. Clark was over by the bullpen, getting footage of the pitchers. I could see the back of his head, not tough when he was 6'7" with a blonde man bun. So I unzipped my camera bag while I approached and pulled out everything I'd need. Right on time, he said to me as he filmed someone throwing, somehow knowing I was there without looking up. Heads up, Johnny Rockford is looking for a ticket. Clark muttered, I already told that fucker no. $10 says he shows up anyway. I set down my bag, adjusted the camera settings, then raised it to take shots of the guy Clark was filming. Clark and I had gotten good at being invisible, and since most of the athletes were used to being filmed, no one even noticed us there. I looked through the lens at the tall pitcher as he let loose with a fastball, and wow, that was some impressive speed. At a glance, he didn't look familiar, so he was probably a freshman. Although, technically, I was behind him and couldn't see his face at all, so I guess I meant that his backside didn't look familiar? No, his backside just looked like a very nice baseball backside. God bless the woman who'd designed baseball pants. And yes, it had to be a woman. Crap. Do you have a spare battery? I asked, irritated that I forgot to charge the camera while I'd been in the office. The little icon in the corner was blinking, which meant I was down to only a couple of minutes. My bag, he said, still taking video. In the back of the truck. Okay, I said, annoyed I'd overlooked the obvious. Charge the freaking battery, dumbass. I guess I'm going back to the truck then. If you see they've started BP, would you mind getting some shots? Clark finally lowered his camera and looked at me. I have a feeling that's going to be better content than bands and bullpens. Sure. I ran back to the truck, and after changing the battery, I spent the next hour getting shots of batting practice. It was fun to see a lot of the players from last year. Mick and Wade were my favorites, and to watch the new guys. UCLA had the #1 recruiting class in the country, which didn't necessarily guarantee a good season, but it made their preseason feel like more than just training. It felt like a prologue. I zoomed in on Wade as he did T-drills, snapping shot after shot of the seriousness on his never-serious face. God, it's great to be back. I never would have imagined I could fall in love with sports, but so help me God, this job had made it happen. Because in addition to learning the ropes by doing things like labeling footage and holding the film crew's stuff, the craziest thing that had come out of my low-level production job, I had discovered that in addition to music, I loved the process of taking flat footage of athletes in their habitat and tweaking it into a compelling story about the human experience. Want to go to Ministry of Coffee when we're done? I lowered the camera, and Clark was standing there, his equipment all packed up. He said, I'm bringing coffee for like half of my night class tonight, so I could use the extra hands. Typical Clark. He knew half the class, and it was only the first day. You're finished already? I glanced down at my watch, and wow, we'd already been there for 2 hours. Yeah, but I can wait if you're not, he said, running a hand over his hair. I've got like 10 people I promised tickets to since we got here, so I can text them while I wait. I know you're overselling the party, by the way, I said accusingly, reaching down to grab my bag. But I think I've got enough hitting shots. Let's go get coffee and figure out how screwed we are. Sounds good to me. He pulled out his sunglasses and slid them up the bridge of his nose. But the world's not going to end if our party goes a little big, you know. Says you. I rolled my eyes and started walking with him toward the parking lot. You're not the one who can't sleep when there are still 60 people in the living room at 3 a.m. It definitely wasn't 60, he said, throwing his arm over my shoulder. And if you would have just drunk a little more, sleeping wouldn't have been a problem. I had to laugh at that, because Clark was fazed by nothing. Ever. A bomb could go off in his bedroom, and he'd say something trite like, well, I guess the universe thought it was time for me to redecorate. Just tell me you didn't promise Woody a ticket, I said, knowing without a doubt that he probably had. Every person I knew loved the bullpen catcher from Alabama, Mr. Southern Charm. But I did not. He wasn't a bad guy, but I went on a date with him last year. It was my one and only college date before I realized I no longer believed in romance, when he A, told me he hated cats, B, called me Red, like that was a universally accepted pet name for a redhead, and C, kissed my neck while we were standing in line at the movie theater concession stand. And ever since that ill-fated date, every time I saw him, I had the pleasure of answering his 20 questions about why I never let him take me out again. I gave some to a couple of the freshman pitchers, Clark said defensively, so I had to give one to Woody. I mean, he was right there. I had no choice. I shook my head at my pathetically soft friend. Well, if I murder him, I'm making you bury the body and get rid of the evidence. Deal, he said. I'll even spring for the shovel.
Chapter 5. No matter what happens in the next 5 minutes, I want you to know that when I opened this door, I was so happy to see you that my heart leapt. It leapt in my chest. For the love of the game. Wes. The first week flew by. The baseball part of it, aka Hell Week, was pretty intense. Practice, lifting, position-specific practice, conditioning. I spent more time suffering with my teammates than I did with my coursework, which sent me scootering to the library every night in an attempt to stay ahead of my studies. Powell was the main library on campus, the one that made sense for me to use as my studying home base. But I like to go a little farther and study at the music library. Because it was quieter. Okay, that was total bullshit. I studied at the quiet music library in hopes of running into a certain music student who might also be studying there. A music student with green eyes, copper hair, and tattooed daisies on her hip. A music student I dreamed about nearly every night, whose voice I could still hear, whose perfume I could still smell. I had yet to see her, but I sensed she was close. I had a few ideas on how to accidentally run into her, such as spend an entire day studying in the lobby of Schoenberg, where all her music classes were likely held. Ask my teammate Eli's girlfriend, who worked in the registrar's office, to screenshot Liz's schedule. Call Mr. Buxbaum and beg for intel, call Helena and beg for intel, etc. But I needed my life to slow down in order for me to make it happen. So, on Friday night, as I walked back to my dorm after a chaotic first week and 0 Liz sightings at the library, I was really looking forward to going out. Not to get shit-faced, but just to let loose with the guys and have an entire evening where I wasn't thinking about school or baseball. Or her. I punched my code into the keypad and pushed open the door. It's about fucking time, Wade, first baseman and one of my suite mates, said, looking like a douche as he stood in the middle of the shared living room wearing tight jeans, a white t-shirt, a black blazer, what the hell, and a goddamn fedora on his big head. I am ready to go. He was with Mickey, catcher/other suite mate, and AJ, who weren't dressed like Bruno Mars, thank God. And they all appeared to be waiting on me. Where, to a costume party? I asked, dropping my backpack onto the coffee table. Don't be jealous of my style, Bennett, Wade said, dusting the front of his jacket like he was big shit. Oh, I am definitely not that. Just get yourself together because we already called an Uber and it's on the way, AJ said. If I'm not dancing soon, I'm gonna lose it. My favorite thing about AJ was the fact that he didn't give a damn what anyone thought about him. And not in an asshole way, but in a true-to-himself way. My boy loved dancing, like all out, covered in sweat because he's dancing so hard. He loved K-dramas, and he would argue to the death the merits of seltzer being better than beer. How long? I asked, really wanting a shower after speeding back to Hitch under the warm California sun. AJ looked at his phone. It says my driver, Larissa, is 12 minutes away. I can shower in 3. I went into the bedroom to grab clean clothes and yelled, I'm good in jeans and a t-shirt, right? No, you scrub, Wade replied at the exact second AJ and Mickey yelled in unison, Yes. I ducked into the shower and was ready just in time to slide into Larissa's ride with everyone else. AJ started chatting up Larissa because she was exactly his type, dark-haired bombshell with book quotes tattooed on her arm. But she was having none of his bullshit. She dropped us at an apartment complex that was swanky as hell, and I was in shock as we got into the elevator. Wow. I looked at the illuminated numbers on the elevator display as the doors closed behind us. College students live here? I couldn't even fathom a guess as to how much the rent would be in a place like this. It wasn't a building for 20-somethings, it was a building for wealthy adults and trust fund babies. I mean, the doorman was collecting party tickets, for God's sake. What the hell are we doing here? I pressed the 2 button. Clark said his roommate's parents are loaded, Wade said, and that they bought the condo just so their kid can rent it from them every month. Damn, I said. Clark, the giant at practice with the video camera, seemed down to earth and very chill, so I was surprised he lived with someone so wealthy. Must be nice. Right? Why don't I have friends like that? AJ said, finger combing his hair as he stared at his reflection in the elevator wall. When the doors opened, we could immediately hear the music coming from down the hall. I wasn't sure how anyone was able to pull off that noise level without the neighbors calling the cops. Maybe the units in the building were insulated so well that they couldn't hear it? Doubtful. We followed the sound to 2C. The door was closed, but it was so loud on the other side that knocking would be ridiculous. AJ turned the knob, pushed, and just like that, the party was upon us. We stepped inside, and holy balls, I was impressed. Holy balls. Was this what parties were like in LA? Or was this unusual? From our spot in the foyer, we could see a living room packed full of people. Some were dancing, some were talking, but the sound system was what had me losing my mind. This party sounded like we were in a club. Like, yes, the music was loud, but the sound was incredible. Also, Heaven Angel was a banger I hadn't heard in way too long. I could see a huge kitchen off to the right of the living room, where there appeared to be even more people drinking. It was controlled chaos, though, in spite of how huge it was. Unlike the high school parties back home, where couches sometimes caught fire and fights were known to break out, everyone was actually behaving. How was this possible? See why I said we had to get tickets? Wade said, grinning. Insane, right? Unreal, I shouted, laughing because it was insane. Are we on a reality show? I love you, man, AJ yelled to Wade, his eyes all over the room like he was a toddler who'd woken up in the middle of Santa's workshop. I followed his starstruck gaze and noticed that there were a lot of girls there. A lot. Yet I didn't care because I didn't see the only one who mattered. Let's go get some beers, Mickey yelled, pointing somewhere where I assumed there were beers. I didn't know where we were going, but I was all in.
Chapter 6. I don't know very much about him, except that I love him. It happened one night. Liz. Come get your shot box! No thanks, I said. Yelled, rather, giving a wave to Campbell from my spot in the corner as the party started getting crowded. I'm good. You're not good until we say you're good. She picked up the 4 shot glasses from the kitchen island in front of her, held them over her head, and made her way toward me with my other 2 roommates following behind her. It was a tradition on house party nights for the 4 of us to share a shot together before things got crazy. My roommates were as follows. Campbell, a sophomore soccer player who was stunningly beautiful and could also drink anyone, man, woman, or frat boy under the table. Clark, a senior who was as good at rugby as he was at knitting. And Leonardo, a charming Italian biology major whose parents were loaded. Hence the luxury right across from campus apartment we were renting from them for next to nothing. So basically it was me, someone who only socialized when forced, and 3 engaging humans who lived to entertain. I'd never been into partying. Too loud, too crowded, too boozy. But after I told them that, my amazing roommates created a role that managed to turn me into a party fiend. I was the DJ at every party we ever had. Leo built a raised workstation in the corner of the living room so I could see everything from my platform, but I was out of the way so people didn't really notice me unless they were trying. I spent the days before a party curating the perfect party playlist, timing out the songs to match the tone of a party's chronology. Chill music when people were mingling at the beginning, a mix of everything people liked to sing along and dance to when they started getting rowdy, and then I brought out all the bangers. Clark's word choice, not mine. For when things were roaring. There was nothing quite like the rush of seeing it work, of seeing everyone shout singing to my musical selections. I was obsessed with it. Obsessed to the point that I'd become quite the little party planner just to witness it all go down over and over again. Last year, we had one big-ish party each quarter, all with themes. The "Oh shit, we're back" bash, tonight was version 2.0, the Christmas sleigh, the anti-Valentine's Day party, and the school's out for the summer, so everyone kiss extravaganza. Leo, being Leo, invited all our neighbors, most of whom were grown-ass successful adults, and also gave them his phone number so they could reach him if the party got too loud. I thought he was insane the first time, but they loved him for it, and we had trouble-free parties. Before my made-up role of DJ came to pass, whenever I was forced to go to a party, I'd just stand beside whomever I came with and wait for fun to happen, which, spoiler, it didn't. As someone not looking for romance, not a big drinker, and not incredibly fond of conversation with strangers, fun wasn't synonymous with a college party for me. But not anymore, because now I was able to enjoy my favorite parts without dreading the rest. I got to do the whole cute outfit, good makeup thing, which was the best part of going to a party. The night I'd found the perfect black and white dotted dress to go with my red chucks, I was able to be excited for an event and have fun with my friends. Yet I got to watch from afar while being invisible and doing music. And it helped that my roommates were stingy with their invites. Campbell's tickets usually went to soccer players and their significant others. Leo mostly invited scientists and a smattering of beautiful girls. Clark's went to baseball friends and rugby players, who were hardcore, but surprisingly sweet. And mine usually went to random athletes that I knew, who asked me for tickets while I was working. Bottom line, there weren't many strangers at our parties, which made them feel safe. "Here," Campbell said, handing me a shot of vodka as Clark and Leo grabbed theirs. "What's the toast tonight, kiddos?" Clark said, his loud voice hard to hear over the noise as he held up his shot. His hair was in a high ponytail, which looked both ridiculous and amazing on him somehow. "Work hard, play hard, stay hard," Leo said, raising his glass to Clark's, ruining the obnoxiousness of the toast by giggling his adorable high-pitched laugh. "To working hard," Campbell said, rolling her eyes and joining the toast. "To all the hardness," I yelled as we clinked and tossed back our shots. I glanced toward the door as it opened and more people came in, then said, "Now leave me alone. DJ Lizzie needs to work." Wade Brooks walked in as my roommates dispersed, wearing that stupid fedora that I'd told him no less than 10 times made him look like a douche. I'd given him my last few tickets. He and his friends were always fun, and I was glad I did when I saw Mick follow him in. I met them last year, and they loved to party, but the baseball guys never got handsy or turned creepy when drunk, which I very much appreciated. Bonus points for being better than a large portion of the general male population. I took a drink of my Captain Morgan and Coke as a couple more guys came in behind them. A short blonde and a tall... Oh my god. Oh my god. I gasped, coughing on my drink as my hand clutched my chest. I squinted and stared, unable to believe my eyes as I tried to get a better look. Everything in my body, my breath, my heart, the movement of the blood in my veins, came to a complete and total stop. I was paralyzed, entirely frozen as I watched him laugh at something the blonde guy said. Dear God, it was Wes. Wes Bennett was in my apartment. I was instantly lightheaded as I tried to process his presence. The power of Wes in the flesh overwhelming after 2 years of watered-down, diluted memories. I think I'm going to faint. This was impossible. How was he there? Why was he there? Was he visiting someone? This can't be happening. My stomach felt like a huge knot that was surrounded by a plague of wing-flapping moths as I watched Wes Bennett enter my living room. Dear God, Wes is in my house! I took a deep breath and tried my hardest to remain calm, to not feel like I was about to pass out or throw up. But my heart was beating too fast. He was grinning and talking to Wade and the blonde. His smile is exactly the same. And I felt like I couldn't catch my breath. I might be having a heart attack. I'd forgotten how tall he was. Maybe I hadn't. But he looked even bigger now. His shoulders had expanded, and his chest looked wide under his Cubs t-shirt. Like he was the professional version of the recreational boy I'd once known. His face looked harder. Like he'd lost all the excess and was whittled down into only sharp angles and dark eyes. And the neck I'd always been distracted by looked somehow more intriguing. Could a neck be muscular? God, how is he still so beautiful? He threw his head back and laughed. And even though I couldn't hear it over the noise, I knew exactly what it sounded like. A laugh I'd recognize anywhere. God, I hated him for looking that good. He wasn't allowed to look that good. They headed toward the kitchen, probably looking for beer, and I tried to take a deep breath, and get a grip. But it was impossible when, unbidden, so freaking unwelcome, the memory of the last time I'd spoken to him came at me. New Year's Day, 2 years ago. I showed up at his house with questions, positive the rumor couldn't be true. And then he looked me in the eye and told me that it was. Why is he here now, after all this time? Does he even know this is my house? I lifted my glass and gulped down the last of my drink, very aware of the way my hands were shaking. I wanted to run and hide. Yet at the very same time, I felt like screaming his name just to see his reaction. I needed to get a grip. I needed to calm down. I needed air.
Chapter 7. I wanted it to be you. I wanted it to be you so badly. You've got mail. Wes. I think she went outside. I followed Wade out the patio door and onto the huge balcony as he tried finding Campbell someone. Apparently she lived here and he was slightly obsessed with her. So since I had nothing better to do, I accompanied him on his search. It might prove amusing, watching Brooks drool all over himself. Is that her? I asked, nodding my head in the direction of a tall blonde in a very short dress. There really were a lot of girls at the party. No wonder he'd been foaming at the mouth to get here. No, Wade said. But maybe Liz knows. Come on. I barely had time to register the name Liz when I saw her. Oh my God. There she is. Libby, holy shit. She was standing there by herself on the balcony, looking like everything I'd ever wanted. The sights and sounds of the party, of the world, disappeared as my eyes drank her in, desperate and needy after being deprived of the sight of her for way too long. God, was it weird that I felt a little choked up? My throat was tight as I tried taking a deep breath, but it felt impossible. Because there she was. Finally. She's here. Liz, within reach, holy shit. And how was it possible that she'd gotten prettier? It felt like years, and also minutes, since I'd last touched her. And I clenched all 10 of my fingers, a little dizzy from the power of my want. She was wearing a black dress that looked amazing on her. But it didn't matter. The dress was unnecessary. Like her clothes weren't important anymore. Which is a weird thing to think, but they didn't matter. Clothes were merely a distraction. Because her skin, face, arms, perfect legs, had a glow now, like she'd been in residence with the warm rays of the California sun 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Which makes sense, since she hasn't been home in 2 years. With her long, loose braid and slick, nude lips, Libby was a summer siren whose magic had nothing to do with what she was wearing. She fucking glowed. I swear to God. And the words Blake Rose was singing through the speakers as Wade and I approached made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Me and you. We're supposed to be together. Hey, Bucksy, where's your roomie? Wade asked, walking right up to her and pulling on her braid. What? Liz blinked and looked confused as she gave him a vague smile, like he'd pulled her back from a million miles away. And then she saw me. Her smile disappeared.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.